Hiya folks, this is a predictions video for the Junior Cert Maths Higher Level for 2025. Now because it's only one paper, unlike the Leaving Cert, it's hard enough to predict sometimes what will come up in this paper because it's 3 years of work that are going into one exam and it's only a 2-hour exam. Now because we've had a few years of this new just Junior Cert paper, I'm going to have a look at some trends kind of as to what's come up, because it's hard to start revising for this exam really because there's so many different topics that are in your book and that you'll have done in class. Now this is a breakdown, it's a general kind of breakdown of the questions that have come up for the last 4 years. So in the top box up here for question 1 in 2024, it was a sample space and probability and then prime numbers. They were the general kind of topics that come up in that question. For question 2, it was a frequency table, drawing a histogram, mean from a frequency table, median, and then third question, finding a percentage, and so on down the paper. And there's generally 13 or 14 questions on it. So there was 13 last year, the year before there was 14, and then only 12 the year before, but obviously then the parts of the questions will be bigger. There might be A, B, C, D, E in some questions then, as opposed to A, B and C for 2023 there. Now 2021, there wasn't actually an exam in 2021. This was just a sample paper, I think, that was sent out by the SEC at the time, but we're still taking that into account anyway. Now I'm going to go through the general kind of topics. So algebra and what comes up within the algebra questions. Then going to move on to trigonometry, see what comes up within the trigonometry questions. Then financial maths, then probability, then sets and Venn diagrams, then coordinate geometry, then statistics and sequences and volume and surface area. So that's it. And it's just identifying what really is coming up. That's not all of the topics, but it's a good few of them, and it's the ones there that I'd be starting my revision on to try and break it down a little bit for the exam. There's links, there's a good few QR codes here. If you click into either of those ones, they'll go through what the actual topics are. They're not exam questions or anything. It just explains a bit about multiplying out brackets, and it explains a bit about minus b formula if you want to click into either of those. And then this is substitution, factorizing and algebraic fractions. Those are the general kind of topics that are coming up within the algebra questions that are being asked in the exam for the last 4 years. I'll just show you here. Last year, they're in question 11, so substituting in, that's just replacing a number with a variable or a letter. Then factorizing inequalities on a number line and algebraic fractions came up last year in question 11. In the year before, in question 9, multiplying out brackets came up, and factorizing difference of two squares. That's a different type of factorizing, so you need to know the different types of factorizing and when to use which one. And I think some more algebra come up and if you look at question 13C there, that was the minus b formula. Again, that's algebra, and there will be more throughout the paper here and there. In 2022, in question 9 there, substitution, factorizing, algebraic fractions and minus b formula came up again. So you'll see it's the same types of topics that are coming up within the algebra. And then in that 2021 paper that I was mentioned earlier, in question 11, it was substitution, factorizing and algebraic fractions. You can see that generally some kind of factorizing will come up. Substitution will always come up in some part of the paper. Algebraic fraction seems popular there, and minus b formula. And those are the topics that I showed you here. So if you want to click into any of those, if you want to pause the videos there and click into any of those QR codes, it'll show you a little bit about what about how to do the actual process of it. This is the question that came up last year. You can see there it was substitution. You're just putting in -2 in for k in the first one. Then these types of ones where there's 4 terms there, pm plus 3p minus m minus 3. I've got it done 2 different ways there. You only have to do it one way, obviously. Those seem popular enough where they put 4 terms there like that. And you have to factorize the first 2 and then the second 2. You might need to move around some first. And then you'll see the inequality question there. Inequalities is linked in with number systems there, with knowing what Z, N and R are. You need to know what those letters mean. Z is the integers, N is natural numbers and R is the real numbers. And it's understanding how to do that on the number line. But it would have been, you would have got some marks there for even knowing that, for even marking in the values that are less than 2, for example, in the first part. The QR code there goes through that question in more detail. This was part D of that question. Actually, this was algebraic fractions. Interesting enough there, they put the 5x minus 2 over 3 and then 2 over 5x plus 2. Usually you have all the x's on the top or all the x's on the bottom. There they kind of switched them. They put one with the x on top and one with the x on the bottom, but that might have confused you a little bit. And then this was a different question, I think, but the QR code goes through this again. This is minus b formula. Now you needed to move over the 271 over to the left hand side here. You can only use the minus b formula when you've got everything on the left hand side of the equal sign, and then you can see what is a, what's b and what's c, and it's just putting it in from there. And that's it really, that's all for algebra. The next one is trigonometry. Again, trigonometry is guaranteed to come up. It's a big enough topic, and really you can break it down into Pythagoras and SOHCAHTOA. The places it's come up then the last few years. There it was question 13 last year. You see Pythagoras there for part A, SOHCAHTOA for part B. Then it goes into similar triangles and area of a triangle there for the last part. The year before, Pythagoras came up in question 14a. You see SOHCAHTOA came up there in part B of question 8, and it came up in part C as well, Pythagoras and SOHCAHTOA. You needed to use there for that question. The year before then, 2022, SOHCAHTOA came up in question 12. And Pythagoras and SOHCAHTOA came up in question 8. Then in that 2021 paper, Pythagoras and SOHCAHTOA come up there, question 13, you needed to use them. And you needed Pythagoras for the last part as well. That was where they put terms in, so they put like an x's into a right angle triangle, and you needed to come up with an equation, but you needed to use Pythagoras to do that. So they can be a little bit awkward in some cases, the questions on these, but if you know the basics of them always, you'll get marks in them. So this was the question last year. Yeah, this was nice enough last year. It was just, the first one is just using Pythagoras. It's just doing 6.1 squared and 2.84 squared. And then that's a basic enough Pythagoras question. They didn't mention Pythagoras in it actually. You had to know yourself to use it. Part B then was just working out an angle with SOHCAHTOA. It's just identifying the sides, seeing that it's tan, and then you have to move the tan across the equal sign. So if you want to click into that QR code there, it goes through in a bit more detail as well again. And then that was really all for last year, I think, from those two topics. Right, the next one is financial maths. Now, income tax, percentage profit, currency exchange, USC. Currency exchange doesn't come up that often, but it's quite easy if it does come up. It did come up one year there. I'll try and see where it was in a minute. And the rest, income tax is probably the big one here. Income tax has come up the last couple of years, I think. And USC, like I put in finding a percentage in brackets there. Generally, these questions will always involve finding a percentage, just being able to work out a percentage of something. at some stage in them. If we look for the financial maths questions here, they are finding a percentage, income tax, compound interest. I don't have compound interest there actually. But yeah, compound interest is probably important as well. The year before then, so that was USC, that was that question. It was where you just had to find a percentage really. The USC was a bit irrelevant, and that income tax is in there again. And reverse income tax, that was a tricky question. I think it's where you had to work backwards to find the gross profit. The year before that then, 2022, yeah, currency exchange came up there in part A. In question 1, it was the first question on the paper, and income tax again in part B. And then in 2021, in that paper, it was finding a percentage there, part D of question 2, and compound interest was part E. So compound interest has come up twice in the last 4 years. And that might have been all for that paper. I don't see income tax there anywhere. And then this was the question last year. This was an easy enough part actually. This was just a part A. You had to figure out how much he earned on Friday and Saturday. It's just doing 7 plus 8 and multiplying it by the 19 because he earns 19 per hour. And then 50% extra. We just have to be able to work out 50%. That is finding a percentage of something, but a lot of you will know that 50% you just have to divide whatever it is in half. And then it's adding it on at the end. This was the income tax part. He earns 1,900 in a month, and at 20%, we're just multiplying by 20%, or you could multiply by 0.2 there, or whatever way you know how to find a percentage. Then the last part is compound interest. Well, it's compounded. You didn't really have to. Oh yeah, well I used the compound interest formula there for part 2, but you probably didn't need it for part 1. Part 1 there, it's just finding a percentage again, finding a percentage of something again, just multiplying by what the percentage is. So easy enough marks there if you know how to find a percentage. Right, probability, just being able to figure out basic probability questions, and then sample spaces. Sample spaces, I think I've come up a few times. So probability, yeah, sample space came up question 1 there last year in 2024, and B was the more probability. Uh, 2023, yeah, sample space came up there again as question 5 in 2023. Sample space again came up in 2022. So it came up the last 3 years. Then you see some probability there in question 5 in 2021. And I don't see sample space there actually. This was the question then last year. It's just there's 4 red counters and 4 blue counters as well, numbered 7 to 10. He picks 1 red and 1 blue at random. So when he picks a 1 and he picks a 7, you have 1 7. When he picks a 1 and an 8, you have 1 8, and so on. It's just filling out that sample space there. You can get an idea from the 2 8 that they've given you anyway. Part B was find the probability that one of the counters B picks is a 7. You just have to see how many of them in here are there where there's one of them is a 7, and it's just going to be those 4 there. So it's 4 out of a total of 16. There's 16 altogether in that sample space. List the pairs of counters where both numbers are prime. You needed to know what a prime number is there. They threw that into that question, even though it's a probability question. So they'll do that quite a lot with this paper in general, because there's only 13 or 14 questions on the paper and there's so many topics that you do over the 3 years for junior cert. They'll mix in questions together. So here they're mixing in what's a prime number with the probability question. So the next one, sets and Venn diagrams. This is always a question by itself as well. You see there, question 5 last year. Set symbols, filling in Venn diagram. You have to know what a factor was, natural numbers was. When you were filling it in, they mixed that in there as well. And set symbols. Then the year before, question 6, set symbols and Venn diagram again. The year before that, then in question 6, there was a Venn diagram in it. And then in question 7 there in 2021, set symbols again. You have to know what those symbols mean. So what I mean by that is the intersecting and union, complement, A less B, cardinal number, those ones. So just knowing the difference between them and being able to do them where there's 3 sets in a Venn diagram as well. This was the question last year then. The first one was you had to shade in, that hadn't come up really before, but you had to shade in what's A intersecting B. Most people would have got that, that's just the middle bit. And then A less B, so what's in A but not in B, you just had to shade that bit in. Then you had to know what natural numbers were, you had to know what factors meant. Factors of 10 are 1, 2, 5 and 10. They're numbers that divide into 10. So you have to just be able to put them into the Venn diagram. You would have got marks for getting so many right. Even if you got 1 or 2 in the wrong place, you would have got most of the marks there. And again, you needed to know what the symbols mean. P intersecting Q intersecting S is just what's in the middle, and it's the 5. And what's in P but not in Q. So what's in P but not in Q is the 6, 9, yeah, just 6 and 9. Right, next one, this is coordinate geometry. There's a good few little bits in this. A lot of them are formula, so coordinates, that's just being able to plot coordinates. That's actually coming up every year as just a little first part of a question, part A of a question, just being able to plot coordinates or say what the coordinates are. And then it's midpoint formula, slope formula, distance formula, equation of a line formula, and parallel and perpendicular lines. That's an important part of this. It's the hardest part of it, but it's understanding that parallel lines have the same slope, and for perpendicular lines, the slope will be where you flip the number upside down and change the sign. So if the slope of one line was 2/3, then the slope of the line perpendicular would be minus 3/2. It's where you flip it upside down and change the sign. It's knowing that. The coordinate geometry, so there, plotting coordinates, question 9. Central symmetry, that's a transformation, and then distance between 2 points came up for part C. That's just using that formula. And a lot of those, they're straightforward enough, those formula, when you practice them. It's just identifying what's x1, y1, x2, y2 and so on, and putting them in. There, question 7, the year before, coordinates, distance between 2 points, perpendicular lines, that's that bit out that I was saying, and then parallelograms, squares, okay. The year before that, coordinates there, question 3, and perpendicular lines was in part C. of that question. You had to understand what it meant again. And it's always to do with slope that you're looking there. And then for that, coordinates there again, identifying slope and y-intercept when you were given the equation of the line. I think axial symmetry again might be in that question, and coordinates again. But for that topic overall, you need to be able to know how to plot coordinates. You need to be able to put numbers into all of the formulae, and it's repetitive enough when you practice those, and then understand that bit with parallel perpendicular lines. That'll get you most of the marks there. The transformations there, the reflections, axial symmetry and so on, and central symmetry, they're transformations. They're not really that topic, but they might be mixed in there. So it's just knowing those as well, knowing what they mean. They're just where a point or a line is moved around really on the graph. Yeah, this was the question then last year. You just had to identify what A was and C was, what the points were, and write them in. Second part was, yeah, they give you a hint here. Say why it's not a parallelogram. Find AB, that's the distance between AB, and that's CD, that's the distance between CD. And it's just using that formula twice, the distance between 2 points formula. Then this was the perpendicular line. This is what I was saying before. M is minus 1 over 2, the point, and then we use the equation of a line formula. So it's being comfortable with using formula there. Right, statistics then. Averages, so mean, mode, median, range, knowing those. And mean from a frequency table, that's come up a little bit. And then there's been drawn either a histogram or a pie chart has come up the last few years as well. Yeah, you see their frequency table come up quite a bit in question 2 last year. Mean from a frequency table, that's what I was saying there. And then you had to draw the histogram as part B. That's quite easy really. Just have to remember how to do it, but most people find that simple enough. The year before was question 2 again. Filling in a table. Actually it was part question 4 more so drawing a histogram again from just a table of values. Mean from a frequency table was in part C of that, and then frequency table question in 2022. You see the mean came up there in question 2D. And drawn a pie chart as well. And I don't see too much more that year, actually, unless I left something out. Then in 2021, mean and mode. So mean, mode, median, range come up there a bit in question 10. This question came up last year then. It was a couple of questions. It was a simple enough question there for a frequency table first. You had to draw a histogram then. That's it there. And then that's where you're working out the mean from a frequency table. You're multiplying each one by the frequency, and underneath you're adding up the frequencies. It's a simple enough concept that's come up the last couple of years, so it's worth looking back on. Sequences then. So drawing linear sequences, knowing what a linear sequence is, knowing what a quadratic sequence is. It was question 12 last year. So this was how it came up. The first one you just had to draw on the next pattern. Then you had to just complete, you had to do what the nth term was there at the end. Is just using that formula, a plus n minus 1d. Pushing a little bit for time here, I don't want to make the video too long. So volume and surface area. So cuboid, cylinder and sphere. So knowing the formula for those two bottom ones, cylinder and sphere, and knowing what to put in where and just practicing it. And then sometimes you might have to put it in and then rearrange around the equation a little bit. They might tell you what the volume of it is or surface area of it is and make you find the radius or something like that. So it's just using equations. This came up last year. Well, you'll see volume and surface area there. Yeah, in question 7 last year. Question 3 the year before. Question 5 the year before that, and yeah, question 9 then the year before that. This one was quite easy. To tell you the diameter, you had to know that the radius then is 3 if the diameter is 6. Most people in higher level won't struggle too much with that. And then it's just putting it into the pi r squared h formula that's in the log tables for you. Then this came up, this was volume of a cube and cuboid. Now it was complicated, there was a lot of algebra in here, but you had to understand how to get volume to be able to do it. So x cubed there, because if you do x times x times x, that gives you the volume. So x cubed is equal to 216, and then you get the cube root of that. You don't divide by 3 or anything like that. Second one is surface area. You have to understand that you're doing 2 times 5 and 2 times 5y, that's the front and the back of that cuboid. And then you get the 2 sides of it, that's 2 times 6 times 5, and then the top and the bottom are y times 6 or 6y, so 2 of those, and you get your expression there. But you have to understand what volume and surface area were. So that's it, that's all of the topics that I'm going to go through here. Again, I know it's a lot, it seems like a lot of topics here, but remember it is only one paper that you're doing, just not like you're doing it paper 1 and paper 2. And I know it's a long video, but hopefully it'll help to break down a little bit and show you kind of what's really coming up each year. If you're struggling, if you're only looking to get a pass really, or you're struggling a little bit to pass tests and that, I'd be focusing in on these topics really first and get to grips with all of them, or at least understand all of them a bit, and that'll definitely get you marks in all of the questions where all of those things come up. So that's it, that's all for the video.